I froze when he leaned close and whispered that he wanted my defenses gone before he even touched me, and my breath locked in my throat. I told myself I only came to deliver laundry for my mother, not to get trapped in the gaze of the most dangerous man in the mansion. My palms sweated as his shadow swallowed the doorway, and I suddenly felt like prey caught in expensive marble walls. I hated how my heart raced, because fear and curiosity tangled in a way I didn't understand. He watched me like he already owned every reaction my body might betray. I remember thinking that one wrong step could change my entire life forever. And deep inside, I knew this mansion hid secrets bigger than my mother's warnings to never be alone near the owner. I should have walked away. Instead, I stayed. Welcome back to Storyverse Vault. To my beautiful, amazing Story Vault family, you all have been so supportive, and I promise to always try my best to give you the best stories as I learn and improve every day. If this is your first time coming across my video, do comment below where you are watching from and hit subscribe to officially join the Story Vault family. Now let's get into today's story. Arya had grown up watching her mother scrub floors in houses owned by people who never remembered servants' names. The mansion of Victor Kane was the largest and most intimidating place her mother ever worked. Victor, known across the city as a ruthless billionaire investor, rarely appeared. Yet his presence controlled every corridor. Servants whispered stories about his temper and obsession with control. Arya only came occasionally to help her exhausted mother carry supplies or deliver washed uniforms. That afternoon, an unexpected early return from Victor's overseas trip disrupted the entire staff routine. Security tightened, supervisors panicked, and employees rushed to look invisible. No one noticed Arya entering through the service hallway until Victor himself walked in and caught her alone. The accidental encounter felt like stepping onto a battlefield without armor. Victor studied her quietly, noticing she didn't carry the usual fear servants showed him. He asked who she was, his voice calm but commanding enough to silence entire rooms. Arya struggled to answer, feeling small under his measured stare. She explained she was only the maid's daughter helping out, hoping the explanation would make her invisible again. Instead, his curiosity sharpened. Victor was a man accustomed to buying loyalty and bending situations to his will. Yet her nervous honesty intrigued him. He dismissed nearby staff with a slight gesture, leaving them alone in the hallway. I remember thinking this was the moment everything tilted, and I couldn't stop it anymore. His attention felt dangerous, like standing too close to fire. Rumors spread quickly through the servant quarters that Victor Kane had spoken personally to a maid's daughter. Arya's mother scolded her, warning that powerful men never notice girls like them for innocent reasons. Victor, meanwhile, reviewed security footage in his private office, replaying the accidental meeting. He saw vulnerability, defiance, and something unpolished that money couldn't manufacture. His obsession with control made unpredictability attractive. He ordered his assistant to learn everything about Arya's life without alarming the staff. I felt watched even hours later, as if invisible eyes followed me home through crowded streets. Something in my chest warned me that escape would not be simple anymore. The following evening, Arya returned reluctantly, determined to avoid any encounter with Victor. But fate cornered her when the supervisor reassigned her mother to another floor, leaving Arya temporarily alone with delivery duties. Victor appeared again, this time calmer, offering her tea instead of intimidation. He asked about her dreams, her education, her plans beyond cleaning uniforms. No wealthy man had ever spoken to her as if her future mattered. I hated how easily his questions disarmed me, how my guard slipped against my own will. Yet something behind his controlled charm felt calculating. He wasn't just curious. He was choosing something. Victor's past relationships had always been transactional, filled with women drawn to his fortune rather than him. Arya's simplicity unsettled his expectations, making him want to test how far her composure would hold. He warned her that proximity to his world could change people permanently. Arya sensed both a threat and an invitation hidden inside his calm words. I told myself I needed to walk away before curiosity turned into something dangerous. But walking away meant returning to the same life my mother struggled through daily. Opportunity and risk now looked disturbingly similar. Victor ended the conversation by assigning her temporary work, assisting in his private wing. The new assignment placed Arya inside the most restricted area of the mansion the next morning. Staff whispered that no servant stayed long in Victor's private quarters without consequences. Victor watched her arrival through glass panels, already planning how close he intended to pull her into his world. I felt like every step forward erased a safe path behind me. He greeted her with a calm smile that somehow felt more unsettling than anger. Outside, the mansion looked peaceful, but inside, invisible power games were already unfolding. Victor Kane never pursued anything halfway, and Aria had just become his newest fixation. The mansion doors closed quietly, sealing the beginning of something neither of them fully understood. Aria stepped into Victor's private wing, feeling as though she had crossed into a place servants were never meant to see. The silence inside felt heavier than the busy corridors outside, where staff chatter usually masked tension. Every surface gleamed with minimalist luxury, but the emptiness made the space feel colder than expected. Victor instructed the head steward to assign Aria light duties, mostly organizing documents and managing deliveries inside his office area. The unusual assignment sparked jealousy among older staff who believed newcomers should stay invisible. Aria sensed their stares, knowing rumors about favoritism spread faster than truth in places like this. I kept telling myself this was temporary, just work, nothing personal, nothing dangerous. Yet every step deeper into his world made that lie harder to believe. Hey, Victor observed from a distance, intrigued by how quickly pressure reshaped people. Victor summoned Aria later that afternoon under the excuse of reviewing inventory discrepancies. Instead, he questioned her about her mother's health, her schooling, and the financial struggles she tried to hide. Aria felt exposed, realizing he knew details she never shared. His resources reached everywhere, and privacy meant little against wealth like his. Victor explained calmly that opportunity often arrived disguised as discomfort. I hated how his words made sense, even while my instincts warned me to stay cautious. He then offered to sponsor her university education in exchange for assisting him personally during his time in the city. The offer sounded generous, yet the conditions felt dangerously unclear. Aria left his office with her future suddenly dangling between gratitude and suspicion. Word of Victor's interest spread quietly, and some staff began treating Aria with forced politeness, while others grew hostile. Her mother confronted her that night, terrified that powerful men often made promises with hidden prices. Aria reassured her, though uncertainty crept into her own voice. Victor, meanwhile, reviewed business reports while absent-mindedly thinking about the young woman disrupting his routine. Control had always defined his life, yet Aria's unpredictability intrigued him beyond reason. I lay awake wondering if success always required stepping into morally gray territory. Sleep came late, filled with uneasy dreams of locked doors and narrowing hallways. The next morning, a sudden crisis inside the mansion forced Aria closer to Victor than either planned. A confidential business guest collapsed unexpectedly during a private meeting, throwing staff into panic. Victor ordered the room cleared while medical teams were summoned immediately. Aria, delivering files nearby, instinctively helped stabilize the guest until professionals arrived. Victor noticed her composure under pressure, impressed by courage he rarely saw among employees. I didn't think, I just reacted, but later my hands shook, remembering how serious it looked. Victor personally thanked her afterward, an action that shocked senior staff accustomed to his emotional distance. The moment shifted something subtle between them, adding trust where suspicion once ruled. But attention from a man like Victor Kane never came without consequences. Later that evening, Victor invited Aria to dinner under the pretense of expressing gratitude professionally. The private dining room overlooked the city skyline glowing beneath stormy clouds. Conversation shifted from formal appreciation to personal territory faster than Aria expected. Victor admitted loneliness surrounded his success, though his tone revealed reluctance in sharing vulnerability. I saw a different man beneath the control, and that scared me more than his authority ever did. He warned her again that closeness to him often complicated lives beyond repair. Aria realized he wasn't asking for permission, but testing her willingness to stay. The storm outside mirrored the tension building quietly between them. As Aria prepared to leave the mansion that night, she overheard two executives discussing Victor's upcoming merger battle. They spoke of enemies willing to sabotage deals using personal leverage. The realization struck her that proximity to Victor meant exposure to dangers beyond emotional complications. I suddenly understood that powerful men attracted powerful enemies. Victor appeared behind her unexpectedly, revealing he already knew she overheard everything. Instead of anger, he calmly offered security protection if she continued working closely with him. The offer sounded less like generosity and more like an invisible contract sealing her involvement. Arya sensed the line between employee and something more was fading rapidly. The following morning, tabloids leaked rumors linking Victor Kane romantically to an unidentified mansion employee. Media vans gathered outside his estate, forcing increased security and internal investigations. Arya arrived to find her co-workers whispering openly, suspicion falling squarely on her shoulders. Victor summoned her immediately, his calm demeanor hiding brewing frustration. I felt trapped, realizing my life was being rewritten by headlines I never agreed to create. Victor assured her he would handle the situation, but warned things would escalate before calming down. Outside, flashing cameras waited for any sign confirming gossip. Inside, Victor Kane decided protecting Arya now meant keeping her closer than ever before, and neither of them yet understood how dangerous that decision would become. The next morning, Arya entered Victor's office, her nerves taut from the previous night's media frenzy. Victor didn't greet her, only gestured for her to sit while scanning reports on multiple screens. I could feel the weight of his stare, heavier than any pile of paperwork. He finally spoke, his voice smooth but carrying an edge I hadn't noticed before. "You were noticed yesterday," he said, not as a question, more like a statement of fact. I swallowed hard, uncertain whether to answer or stay silent. He leaned back, fingers interlocked, eyes locked on mine as if calculating how I would react. The silence stretched uncomfortably, making my heartbeat sound deafening. Then he said something that chilled me. "I want you mindless before I'm even inside." My stomach dropped. Victor's assistant delivered morning tea while Arya tried to steady trembling hands. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and expensive cologne. I told myself this was a business context, nothing personal, yet the words lingered in the air like a threat. Victor's eyes didn't waver, but I could sense amusement lurking beneath control. He asked about her mother's health again, casually as though layering danger with concern. I answered cautiously, feeling like every word was under invisible scrutiny. Victor's presence felt suffocating, yet a strange magnetism kept my body from fleeing. He made notes silently, then looked up and instructed that Arya accompany him to review an acquisition site. I realized leaving his office would not mean leaving his influence. The mansion had already trapped me. The acquisition site was a massive abandoned building slated for redevelopment. Victor walked with deliberate pace, eyes scanning every detail, ignoring the staff who followed. Arya struggled to match his stride, her mind still replaying his words. I noticed graffiti on cracked walls and broken glass scattered on the floor, a stark contrast to the luxury of the mansion. Victor pointed out structural flaws and investment opportunities with a calm authority that made the space feel alive under his gaze. Despite myself, I found focus sharpening, trying to understand his world. I hated how my curiosity about his methods grew, even as fear twisted in my chest. Victor paused, turning to me unexpectedly, eyes piercing. "You noticed more than most. That can be dangerous here," he said. I didn't know if it was praise or a warning. Returning to the mansion, Victor assigned Arya tasks that required access to sensitive offices. The staff avoided her, as though proximity to Victor brought contamination. I felt their judgment, aware that rumors were spreading like wildfire. Victor watched silently, noticing her hesitation but not intervening. He later summoned her into a hidden library, a room stacked with rare books and city maps. I realized the space was both a sanctuary and a trap, designed to impress and intimidate simultaneously. Victor explained that this room contained both his history and leverage, things he rarely shared. I felt exposed, standing in a place most people only dreamed of entering. His control over knowledge, over people, over perception was absolute. Victor asked Arya to organize confidential files while narrating stories of past business battles. I listened, fascinated despite a warning voice in my head screaming to leave. His tone shifted unpredictably from instructional to personal reflection. I realized he was testing boundaries, probing how she would respond to intimacy masked as mentorship. Arya noticed subtle gestures, lingering glances that suggested obsession more than simple interest. Every time I made a mistake, he corrected me with precision, never raising his voice but making control clear. I felt both trapped and strangely respected, an unsettling duality. By evening, Arya had cataloged everything he requested, mentally exhausted and emotionally frayed. Victor didn't leave. He watched quietly, ensuring she felt the weight of presence without words. Night fell over the mansion, and Arya lingered in the library, unable to leave thoughts of Victor behind. I thought about the words he had whispered, their echo making my skin crawl. The mansion was silent except for the faint hum of air conditioning and distant city noises. Victor entered unexpectedly, holding a single folder, closing the door softly behind him. He handed it to her with a calm expression, instructing her to study its contents carefully overnight. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach, sensing that refusal was not an option. Victor leaned closer, voice low and intimate, reiterating that excellence required compliance. I realized my life was now intertwined with his desires, my choices subtly erased. And for the first time, I truly understood that nothing in this mansion was innocent. Alone, Arya opened the folder and discovered detailed personal files on her family. Each document revealed information she never intended to share outside her home. I felt fear spike, understanding that Victor's influence stretched beyond the mansion walls. Memories of her mother warning her about powerful men returned vividly. Victor's voice echoed in her mind, a reminder of the thin line between opportunity and danger. I realized then that nothing in my life would be the same. Not education, not safety, not freedom. The folder was a trap disguised as guidance, a test she didn't agree to, but had already failed by curiosity. Victor's obsession wasn't casual. It was calculated, watching how I would react, shaping my choices before I even understood them. Outside, the city lights glimmered, unaware of the quiet storm brewing in the mansion. The next morning, Arya arrived at the mansion with exhaustion tugging at her limbs. Her mind raced through the folder's revelations, while staff whispered about the previous night's mysterious late work. Victor appeared without warning, his presence commanding the grand foyer. I froze, caught between the instinct to retreat and the unshakable pull of curiosity. He studied me silently, as if assessing whether fear or compliance dominated my reaction. Without speaking, he gestured toward the private elevator, directing me to accompany him on a site visit downtown. I felt the weight of invisible chains tightening. Leaving the mansion physically didn't feel like freedom. Every step outside reinforced the fact that my life was no longer entirely mine. Victor Kane's shadow stretched long, and I walked willingly into it. The downtown location was an abandoned high-rise slated for luxury conversion. Concrete walls loomed around them, graffiti scrawled across broken windows. Victor navigated the site with practiced ease, clipboard in hand, issuing sharp instructions to engineers. I followed quietly, cataloging every detail as my mind struggled to separate professional observation from fear. I noticed cracks in the floorboards and rusted scaffolding, each hazard magnified under Victor's scrutiny. He paused at the edge of a partially constructed balcony, eyes scanning the city below. "You must always understand the risks before the reward," he stated, his tone unusually intimate. I felt the weight of responsibility pressing against my chest. The space was dangerous, yet controlled entirely by his command. Returning to the mansion, Arya's nerves were frayed, her thoughts tangled with fear and fascination. Victor instructed her to catalog new contracts in his office, emphasizing attention to detail. I worked silently, aware of his occasional glance over the rim of his glasses. Every correction he made was precise, leaving no room for error. The mansion's luxury now felt suffocating, each polished surface reflecting a reality she couldn't escape. Victor leaned back in his chair, observing without interference, studying reactions like a chess master. I felt exposed, every heartbeat audible in my ears as I tried to appear composed. He offered no words of comfort. Presence alone communicated control and expectation. Even mundane tasks became tests of compliance under his watchful eyes. Later, Victor invited Arya to his private gym under the pretense of reviewing security footage. The space was modern and expansive, with mirrored walls reflecting their movements. I felt disoriented, unsure whether this was mentorship, control, or something else entirely. Victor handed her a tablet, directing her to note inconsistencies in the footage. I worked mechanically, aware of his proximity and the subtle pressure it brought. His attention never wavered, following every gesture and misstep. I realized that even in routine surveillance, he manipulated the situation to measure her composure. Every flicker of hesitation was cataloged, every glance noted. The line between professional training and personal obsession blurred with every passing minute. Victor scheduled an unexpected late-night briefing, citing urgent financial news. The mansion felt colder at night, with only the dim corridor lights illuminating their path. I felt my pulse quicken as he led me to a secure conference room, keycards granting access only to him. Inside, large monitors displayed citywide data streams, contracts, and sensitive communications. I realized the breadth of his influence stretched beyond imagination. Victor instructed her to analyze trends, his voice calm but laced with authority. I worked quickly, aware that error might cost more than embarrassment. He watched silently, the quiet weight of his presence amplifying every small motion. For the first time, I understood that proximity to Victor Kane meant constant evaluation, both subtle and absolute. After hours, Victor finally dismissed her, yet gave instructions she couldn't ignore. "Continue your studies tonight. Accuracy matters more than fatigue," he said, tone leaving no space for refusal. I left the room, mind spinning, heart heavy with anticipation and dread. Outside, the quiet mansion seemed peaceful, but I knew danger lingered behind every polished surface. I realized my life had been subtly rewritten. Autonomy was no longer mine to claim. Victor's obsession wasn't hidden. It simply operated under layers of control, influence, and intimidation. I understood that every choice from now on carried consequences orchestrated by him. Alone in her room, Arya opened the files again, reviewing sensitive information with trembling hands. Outside, city lights glittered indifferently, unaware of the quiet storm reshaping a young woman's existence. The following morning, Victor summoned her early, his presence more commanding than ever. He handed her a personal schedule with tasks spanning both mansion and city operations. I realized there was no distinction between work and surveillance, education and obedience. His instructions were precise, leaving little room for independent thought. Arya felt the tension of being observed constantly, yet she also noticed subtle admiration in his gaze. Victor emphasized that loyalty would be tested, implicitly linking her family's safety to compliance. I understood that rejection or hesitation could have consequences I wasn't prepared to face. Every step inside the mansion now carried the weight of expectation, control, and dangerous fascination. Victor Kane's obsession was no longer abstract. It was an unrelenting presence shaping her every action. By midday, Arya felt trapped, yet strangely compelled, her thoughts oscillating between fear, curiosity, and resistance. Victor called her to a high-level meeting with external consultants, ensuring she witnessed strategic negotiations firsthand. I noted every detail, trying to maintain composure while fear whispered in my chest. Victor's presence was magnetic, his gaze following her attentively as consultants discussed numbers and projections. I realized that the mansion, the office, and even her personal life were now extensions of his influence. The meeting ended with subtle praise for her observations, yet each compliment carried an undercurrent of possessiveness. I felt myself shrinking, aware that each moment with him further entwined my choices with his desires. Outside the conference room, staff whispered, their suspicion intensifying as they noticed the growing bond. Victor Kane had claimed not just attention, but compliance, shaping her life piece by piece. That evening, as she returned to the private wing, Arya reflected on the past day's events. I realized my freedom had narrowed, with every decision subtly dictated by Victor's obsession and control. The mansion seemed quieter than ever, yet I could feel the invisible weight pressing down. Victor appeared in the hallway, casually brushing past her, as if reminding her of his omnipresence. I shivered, understanding that his influence extended beyond schedules, instructions, or meetings. It was personal, calculated, and absolute. Arya's future was no longer solely her own, and every choice, every action, every thought would be observed and assessed. Victor Kane's obsession had become an unspoken law she could not escape. The night deepened, and the mansion, though silent, was alive with the invisible chains of control and desire. I whispered to myself, knowing there was no turning back. If you've been gripped by Aria's journey with Victor Kane, don't forget to subscribe, hit like, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and stay connected for the next chapter of this intense story. The storm is just beginning, and you won't want to miss what happens next.